Hey, this is 77, and the under the hood for the January patch released about 15 or so hours ago at the time of this recording. I'm not too sure. I imagine most of you watching this video have already read the article itself, or you've watched a whole bunch of other videos by other content creators, so I'm not gonna talk too much about the content of the update, just more on like my thoughts and everything and what this under the hood could mean for Need for Speed Heat going forward into 2020. And the first thing they talk about in this under the hood is steering wheel support. This is nice to see, like I actually recently tried to see if my G29 actually worked with this game about like a couple weeks ago, and it didn't. So it's good to see the option is there for people who want to try out the game's new handling model with a steering wheel. Following on from that, the under the hood mentions the chat wheel. This is an interesting addition, all things considered. I remember Payback had like an emoji, like emote wheel sort of thing. So it's not like that, but this is more like the one that's in Forza Horizon 4 kinda. So you like send like little messages and whatnot for anyone who's like near you to see it and read, I guess. It's an interesting little feature there. I have no complaints about it, all things considered, but the article mentions that the messages are pre-made. So I wish we'd have the option. I'm not sure if it's going to be in the game, but I wish we'd have the option to like set our own like messages into the wheel, so we can like send like things that are not as generic as like hello or hey or whatever. And moving on from that though, we have a Timesaver Pack called Keys to the Map, which shows all the collectibles that the game features on the actual map itself. It's about time it gets added, I guess. I remember the creative director for the game, Riley Cooper, actually talking about this in an interview he did with IGN, I think, during Gamescom. So I'm not really too sure as to like who it's for really, because like by this point in time, there's a whole bunch of people who've like very well documented where all the collectibles are and whatnot. But I guess for some people who are out there who like don't have the time and just want all the collectibles, they can just like buy this and just see where they all are. Hopefully it's not too expensive. It's not really something that I'd be interested in, but I imagine there are some people out there who might actually want this, but I don't know. So moving on from there, we have a couple of quality of life improvements. The first of these being that when we actually drive through a repair station, it actually repairs our car visually instead of just, underneath the hood, I guess. So that's nice to see, because it's very annoying when you're like, you want a clean car, that looks nice, but you have to like go back to the garage and like leave it and stuff, so that means like 2 loading screens. It's annoying, so it's good to see that we can actually do that now, out in the world. But anyway, moving on from there, we have a second improvement, and that is that now for certain actions you have to actually hold the button instead of tapping it, which is going to be very useful for people like me who use manual transmission. There have been numerous times where I'd go to like shift up, but I'd forget that I'm like right next to the garage, and as a result I'll be sent back into the garage and into another loading screen, which is very annoying. Good to see that now we have to like hold the right bumper to go back into the garage, which is very nice. And hopefully this fix extends to the bribing mechanic as well, so we'd have to like hold the button instead of like shifting up and like losing like 10 grand. So all in all, it's not a terrible under the hood by any means. It's just that there was just a lot of like high expectations for us. There was a lot of teasing, a lot of speculation about what this article would contain. There were talks about how it's not just going to be a patch, that there's going to be new stuff added, and as a result there was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of speculation surrounding the addition of new content, things like speedless, new DLC even, so adding like new events and whatnot, new story stuff even. There was a lot of anticipation for this under the hood, and to see that it's just some quality of life improvements and some minor additions, it's definitely disappointing, and I don't blame the community for being annoyed by it. For me, it just signals a missed opportunity, and I'll go into more detail on what I mean by that later, but like I don't blame the community for all the fallout that's happened since this article's released, because by this point in, like, for example, Need for Speed 2015's like release cycle, I guess, we'd already received the Legends update, which added a rep cap increase, a new story thread featuring Eddie and Melissa from Need for Speed Underground, new music, and a whole bunch of other like cool little additions. That patch released in December of 2015, like a little over a month after the game's release, and here we are 2 months after Heat's release, and we've seen 2 patches, I think, that haven't really added much meaningful content. Like, the quality of life improvements are really nice to see, but I think the community really wants to see some new content, and hopefully looking forward forward that that is exactly what we'd get. And you know, speaking of looking forward, at the end of this Under the Hood article, it mentions how we're going to see some new cars being added soon, so I guess this will be sometime in February. So that's cool. You know, it's always nice to see new cars being added. Hopefully that's not just cars, like, you know, I like to see some new events, you know, because it's nice to have like new cars to drive around, right? But it still can get quite boring to just do the same set of events and just new cars, you know what I'm saying? So it'll be cool if we saw some like new events being added, or maybe even like a race editor where we can like put down checkpoints and stuff so we can make our own races, so ghosts don't have to worry about making new events. Maybe, I don't know, there's a lot of cool content that we'd all like to see be added to the game, and hopefully we find out more on what's going to be coming to this game this year. Which brings me nicely to, you know, what I want to talk about, and that is how this Under the Hood was a missed opportunity, because this Under the Hood could have been like a broader look at what we can expect to see for Need for Speed Heat in 2020 rather than just what we're going to see in January, you know. It would have been really cool if we got like, you know, some roadmaps similar to what DICE does with Star Wars Battlefront 2 and Battlefield 5 at one point, you know, where we actually get to see like what kind of content we're going to get. But I don't know, you know, I look forward to the new cars that are going to be added soon. Hopefully we get some more content on top of that, and hopefully Ghost and EA don't pull the plug on this game too soon. But anyway, that'll be pretty much all for this video. I didn't write a script for this one. I felt like, you know, I just wing it and see how it goes for me, because otherwise I'd just take way too long just like trying to like gather all my thoughts and everything about it, you know. Hopefully we see some cool stuff with this game, you know, looking forward later down the line. But you know, if you found this enjoyable in any way, you know, and you like this type of content, or you like racing games like Need for Speed and other stuff, I guess, definitely consider subscribing. But if you don't, you know, don't worry about it. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day. Take care.